We've just had a snapshot into some of the technologies and solutions that will help transform our cities into smart, sustainable oasis. Smart place making and procurement, augmented reality, measured performance, refocusing our cities away from cars, and Tesla's Power Pack 2. So because I'm between it's between me and morning tea, I'm going to go straight to, if any of you have questions, please put your hand up and people will come around with a microphone. So put your hand up so I can see you, otherwise I will ask the first question. I'm sure someone will have a question in the room. Yep, I was actually looking for you. There you go. First question of the day.
Second.
Oh, is it? Oh, well, I had to run out of the room. Sorry, mate.
Jeff
Jeff
Robinson from Oricon.
I've got to take a photo of this. This is just too good, and then I can tweet it. This has been like 10 years, 11 years. You ask the question,
I'll keep
take the photo.
Chris, I'd like to ask the question, or Cleve, I should say. Amazing what Tesla have done. Why would I want to, if I bought a battery last year, I can get one for the same price, or twice the power for the same price. Why wouldn't I wait next year till the Powerwall 3 comes out, or whatever? I mean, could you tell us a little bit about the trajectory of the cost of batteries, what time they're going to come down? We've seen it happen in PVs. What do you reckon is there going to be the same kind of decline in price around battery technology?
Sure, thank you for the question. So I think that's a question on everyone's kind of mind around what is the price point going to be. I think when it comes to battery storage and solar, there's never going to be a better time to kind of get into the industry if you're doing it for the right sustainability and lifestyle reasons. Price points will certainly change. We have seen a dramatic change the last 12 months between the first generation Powerwall and Powerwall 2, and the same with Power Pack as well. We believe that we already have a lot of that efficiency built in to the Gigafactory, and so that price point has changed dramatically and fairly quickly. Will that change further? It certainly may. We can't certainly predict what's going to be happening further in the future, but we certainly believe the price point that we have now for battery storage is something that provides a good payback and a good ROI for most homes across Australia. Thank you.
Question up here.
Yeah, g'day folks. Andrew Heaton from Sourceable. Question for anyone who wants to have a go at it. We've got all these bits of data and information being collected by all these different people. What do you see as the challenges in terms of data being owned by various different people and bringing together data which is owned by different people together for use? And when something goes wrong with that data, who owns it and who's responsible?
You go, Catherine. That's a you question.
You don't need a lawyer. What you need to do is what the UK government did, where they actually spent time to stratify data. And I'll send you the link. So what they've done is there's data, but there's 4 categories of data. There's open data, sharing data, private data, and then data that is basically going to come out of machine learning, so they're not quite sure where that sort of data goes. It's the streaming data. By doing that, you actually avoid the conversations with the lawyers, because you actually define whether or not you're going to make the data publicly available as it is open. And the reason why you do that is you want to innovate. Because history has shown us, if you give people information, they build new products and services and they create better lives for their families. And then if you move down the shared data, that's a relationship or a contract between those people who are putting the data out and using it for purposes, obviously, to commercialise. Just really quickly, the challenge with data is that it's locked in proprietary vendor solutions. Now I'm spending all of my time with cities, and this week I'm going to Toowoomba, Sunshine Coast, Ipswich, Southern Grampians in 1 week. Why? Because we're actually enabling communities where if we're going to build one of these public access networks, we make it really clear to them they own the data. So if they attach an application, such as a flood monitoring system, to this network, the city doesn't have to pay the vendor an access fee to get that data. It's a great question, and I think that in history and time we will see more openness of data, And yes, we need to be sensible about avoiding litigation, but by having that stratification of data, I think that helps a lot.
Chris?
Yeah, let me give just a quick complementary perspective that we see around the world. I think one of the things, particularly, let me take it to the property industry very specifically. I think what we see is a three-prong issue that's creating an asymmetry of information in the property industry and driving action. What I mean by that is that people are increasingly aware of, say, stresses in the ambient environment. If you send a person to Shanghai to go to work or to Poland or Warsaw, the folks you're sending are aware from public data sources that there's a challenge. On the other hand, you have now personal technology, wearables and so forth, that allow them to monitor their own environment. And so when they go into a workplace, they go into a retail establishment, now that occupant has data. You know who doesn't have data? The landlord, the owner, the manager right now. That information asymmetry between what's known in the public realm, what's increasingly accessible to the occupant or the tenant, and the fact that the landlord or the corporate occupier is lagging behind in that data is driving important conversations about risk and liability and motivating folks to close that gap to create at least some parity. So just to offer a different perspective.
Thanks. I think there's a question up the back there. Yep.
Amir Gerges from Northrop Consulting Engineers. I've got a personal opinion that our approach as in the industry in Australia to smart cities is somewhat scattered, that we don't have a clear definition for what it is, and I don't see that there are solid steps taken in terms of how we can actually define it and implement it in the built environment. I'm interested to know whether the speakers share a similar opinion. And the other part of the question is whether you think there's a role to play for the newly formed Smart Cities Council, Australia and New Zealand.
Well, there's definitely a role for anybody to play. You're right. Australia is way behind on smart cities. And I think it's because we're a permission-based society. We constantly look over our shoulder going, oh, let's go get a government grant, or let's go and see basically who can help us. Whereas in Europe and the US, people are actually just rolling up their sleeves and getting on with it and then showing government basically how it works. The thing about smart cities is you can't just box it into one thing. It means different things to different people. The sort of communities that I'm working with are really, really focused about sustainability because they want to create a better destiny for their communities. So they're very much around the sustainability agenda, and there's some really good use cases around that. I would encourage everybody in the room today to come on board with the Smart Cities Council of Australia, the Australian Smarter Communities Association, the Internet of Things Alliance Australia. There's great opportunities to get involved and create your own destiny and define what you want to do for smart cities, and don't wait for that government grant.
Yep. There's another question down here. Nadia?
Yes, Nadia from Lendlease. I guess a question also for everyone, but I think a lot of data is obviously already generated, and we're not often making the best use of the data that's generated already. So with all the data influx that you mentioned is coming in, are we ready? And if not, how are we actually going to address it?
May I take a first stab at that briefly? So I think part of the thing that strikes me from your question is that a lot of the data that we have today, like when we do a Green Star certification or we do neighbors or we have some traditional planning information, I think one thing that is often lost in the conversation about smart cities is we focus on sensors and this thing. But for me as a scientist, these two things are basically those old, slow data about the attributes of our buildings and how they're managed and the credits we've got and those kinds of things. Those are the essential piece to link to sensor data and to link to experiential information in the smart city and understand what happened. We need to care about the old, slow data at the same time we're bringing in the new data to help us understand it. And know, as an industry, we are lousy with data quality, we are lousy with data handling, we are lousy with interoperability relative to our peers, and that understanding that it is not simply these new sources of data, their value is in direct proportion to how we manage the old slow data, and we have to develop an industry sense that this matters in a specific kind of way. So it's a great question.
Colette?
Yeah, I'll take it from the transport on demand perspective, where data is critical to this, and as you say, there's already quite a lot of data. But data also tends to show inconvenient truths. in terms of when you have all that utilisation data, you start to see that some of the buses are running around at 16% utilisation, for example, and no transit authority wants to show that kind of figure. So in an effort to unlock all that data and use it for the good purpose, which is to streamline the process for everyone and optimise all the mobility services, we have to actually uncover some things that are a little bit uncomfortable. And that happens also in energy as well. So I think one of the things, we have all this data and people are looking at it, but they're also realising what that is actually telling us. And so it's around policies and what we can do to embrace that data and use it for what we want to use it for in terms of improvement and take away some of those downsides that come out.